What is that?
This looks like it's part of a tool.
Is it?
Yeah.
We have sought to find irrefutable proof of men working in the money pit at depth.
Rick Lagina's drill hit something unbelievable 160 feet deep. Not treasure, but human-made markings far older than any known explorers. Way down in the earth, a surprising thing was found suggesting very old, strange activities. Does this unexpected find mean the entire history of the island needs to be rewritten? Tune in, because the team had no idea that they had actually woken up to something ancient. Path into the unknown earth. The powerful drilling operation for the shaft named Tot 1 was in full swing within the perplexing money pit area. Its heavy machinery ground steadily downward, boring deeper into the island's layered earth. A strong sense of hopeful expectation filled the air for the entire Oak Island team. Their main goal was to reach the geological feature known as the Solution Channel, a natural underground passage believed to lie more than 200 feet beneath the surface, a place where valuable items might have settled over time. Closely watching the dig's progress were dedicated team members Jack Begley and geologist Terry Matheson. They diligently kept records of the shaft's increasing depth. Early in this particular phase of work, precise measurements indicated they had reached a depth of 142 feet. As the day wore on and the robust equipment continued its relentless task, they later confirmed that the excavation had advanced further, down to 171 feet. A very meaningful point in this careful descent was the team's understanding that they were likely digging through the remnants of a much older shaft, the historic Chappelle shaft.
We're chewing through the side of the chapel shaft.
This earlier attempt to find something of value had been undertaken in the year 1931 by Melbourne Chappelle, his father William, and another treasure pursuer, Frederick Blair. That shaft, constructed with the tools and knowledge of its time, had reached a depth of 157 feet. It represented a bold, though ultimately not successful, effort to get to a supposed underground vault that William Chappell and Frederick Blair believed they had located many years before, back in 1897. The current team's belief that Tot 1 was now intersecting with the remains of this old Chappelle shaft was a source of encouragement. It strongly suggested they were operating in the correct historical vicinity within the money pit, a place that had seen many attempts to uncover its long-standing questions. As the Tot 1 shaft bit further into the ground, a considerable quantity of old wood fragments began to come up from the hole. Terry Matheson mentioned to Jack Begley that there was truly a ton of this old wood, a very clear indication that their modern shaft was indeed cutting through the side of that much older Chappelle shaft. The team was fully prepared and equipped to continue pushing the Tot 1 shaft even deeper if circumstances required it.
So I'll take another measurement in about an hour and see what we're gaining per hour.
Okay.
They had on hand enough caisson material, the large, strong steel tubes that line and support the shaft walls, to extend the excavation down to 215 feet or even further. The atmosphere around the entire operation was charged with a significant unspoken question. Once Tot 1 advanced below the 200-foot mark, deeper than the Chappelle shaft and into ground that no one had ever directly explored before, would it finally make contact with the famed underground chamber or the deposit of valuables that so many had sought for so many years? The work pressed on. Later that same afternoon, the sun, beginning its slow descent, cast long shadows across the busy site. The primary focus of activity now shifted from the immediate drilling to the careful sifting and close examination of the spoils. This was the earth, clay, and various bits of debris that had been brought up from the very bottom of the deep Tot 1 shaft. It was during this painstaking process, while team members were meticulously looking through material that had been excavated from a depth of over 160 feet, that Marty Lagina, alongside the team's highly skilled metal detection expert, Gary Drayton, made what would soon be understood as a potentially very important discovery. This depth of more than 160 feet was profoundly significant. It was deeper than any known previous treasure seekers had ever managed to explore in that specific part of the money pit. They were truly in new untouched territory. Amidst the damp mud and heavy clay, a piece of dark, weighty metal captured their immediate attention. It was a fairly substantial chunk of old iron. As they looked at it more closely, they could clearly see fine lines, almost like grain, running along its surface. These were called striations. Marty quickly noted how very old the iron appeared. Gary Drayton, drawing upon his many years of experience handling and identifying old metal objects, had an instant feeling that this was something quite special. He thought it could very well be part of a very old tool. Both men at once understood the weighty implications of finding such an object at this remarkable depth. They were now well below the known bottom of the chapel shaft, which had only reached 157 feet. This crucial fact meant the newly found artifact was extremely unlikely to have been left behind by Chappelle or any members of his crew from 1931. It almost certainly had to be much older. Gary, with his deep familiarity with ancient iron, felt a strong sense that this piece might even have belonged to the original depositors, those unknown individuals who had undertaken the enormous and still not fully understood work on Oak Island many centuries ago. The tool fragment, which looked as though it could be the tip of an old pickaxe because of its distinct shape and a slight curve, was clearly hand-wrought. This meant it had been painstakingly made by a blacksmith by hand and was not a product of more modern machine manufacturing. When Rick Lagina arrived at the sifting station to see what his brother Marty and Gary had uncovered, he too was immediately struck by its ancient appearance. He carefully observed its handmade quality, remarking on how out of place it seemed, having come from what was, at least in its upper sections, part of a modern drilling effort.
Makes you think we're on the right track.
Absolutely.
A shared sense of excitement and importance rippled through the team members who were present. This discovery, this solid piece of the distant past brought up from such an extreme depth, gave them a renewed feeling that they were indeed on the correct path, perhaps getting closer than ever before to the very heart of Oak Island's enduring and perplexing story. This heavy piece of worked iron, pulled from such a surprising depth, now carried the weight of a much older story waiting to be understood by the persistent searchers. Decoding an ancient tool. The intriguing piece of dark, heavy metal, strongly believed to be a fragment of an ancient pickaxe, was carefully handled and transported from the bustling, muddy environment of the Money Pit site to the more controlled setting of the Oak Island Research Lab. There it awaited the discerning examination of Carmen Lega. Carmen was a highly skilled blacksmithing expert whose extensive knowledge of old iron tools, their manufacture, and their uses was greatly valued and respected by all members of the Oak Island team. The fellowship members were particularly eager to hear Carmen's professional assessment of this unique find. For many years, they had diligently sought clear, undeniable physical proof of human activity, of people working at significant depths within the Money Pit, long before the first widely known accounts of treasure hunting and excavation began on the island back in 1795. Now, this compelling item had emerged from their deepest and most ambitious shaft to date, T1, a project they had even nicknamed the One Thing in their hopeful anticipation that it would finally yield a conclusive and game-changing discovery. Gary Drayton made sure to point out to Carmen an especially interesting aspect of this artifact: the considerable depth at which it had been found. He emphasized that it was recovered from a really deep level within the shaft. Carmen then began his careful and methodical examination. He first noted that it was a fairly chunky piece of metal, indicating it was substantial and robust. He observed that it was clearly broken off from what must have been a larger, more complete tool that would have extended further from the recovered fragment. With a practiced eye, Carmen also drew attention to the fine grains that were visible in the metal structure. He pointed out how these grains were starting to fold over and compress on one end of the piece. He explained that when a tool of this nature is repeatedly and forcefully struck against something very hard, the metal grains inherently begin to fold up and layer upon each other in a distinctive, recognizable pattern. This visual evidence was quite clear, he stated. This tool had definitely been repeatedly banged onto something unyielding with considerable force, over and over again.
And when you beat onto it repeatedly, they do start to fold up in an S pattern like. So this was repeatedly banged onto something.
Rick Lagina, always keen to understand every nuance, asked Carmen if he could infer from the evidence on the tool what that something might have been. Could it have been stone, or perhaps was it used against other metal? Carmen was quite certain in his reply. He affirmed with confidence that the tool was definitely used on stone. It had encountered rocks or very hard ground or whatever similarly tough material the original diggers had faced deep within the earth. He then identified the object as being part of a very heavy, very old pickaxe. He described it as a type of primitive mining tool designed for hard labor. And then Carmen Legg delivered his most stunning and significant observation, his carefully considered assessment of the artifact's age. Based on its specific shape, its substantial size, and the particular way it had been made, all indicators of its period of manufacture, he concluded that he typically only saw primitive mining tools of this exact kind dating from the 1500s. He allowed for the possibility that it might be from the early 1600s, but he was firm in his professional opinion that it was certainly no more modern than that period. This pronouncement was truly breathtaking for everyone listening. Gary Drayton sought to confirm his understanding, clarifying that it was therefore a tool specifically used for tunneling through difficult ground, for the hard work of getting rid of rocks or smashing them up. It was, in essence, a heavy-duty digging tool from a very distant past. Carmen's expert dating of the tool was astounding, suggesting human endeavor on the island centuries before any recorded history there. Connecting past, people, and purpose. Following Carmen Legg's remarkable and insightful assessment in the Oak Island laboratory, which had already provided a startlingly early time frame for the pickaxe fragment, another layer of important understanding was added by Emma Culligan. Emma served the team as their dedicated archaeometallurgist, an expert in the scientific study of old metals. She presented the detailed results of her own scientific scan of the ancient iron artifact. Her analysis involved examining a carefully prepared cross-section of the metal. This allowed her to identify the presence and proportions of various trace elements and impurities within the iron, including substances like potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, and magnesium. Emma clearly explained to the assembled team that, based on the specific types and the observed amounts of these impurities she was seeing in the metal, they were characteristic indicators of iron manufacturing processes that were commonly used, in her professional expert opinion, sometime between the 1500s and the 1700s. This scientific dating derived from the very composition of the metal itself, beautifully and strongly aligned with Carmen Legg's independent assessment. Carmen had based his conclusions on the tool's physical characteristics, its style of manufacture, and his extensive knowledge of historical blacksmithing techniques. A profound wave of realization washed over the team members as they absorbed this double confirmation. This tool, this humble yet resilient piece of worked iron, was by both expert accounts, practical and scientific, from a period way before the story of the money pit as it was widely known, a story that officially began with the area's discovery by young men in the 1790s. The pickaxe fragment was potentially 2 to 3 full centuries older than that benchmark date. This new information, this revised and much earlier timeline, immediately brought to the forefront of everyone's minds the team's recent and very illuminating visit to the distant island nation of Malta, located in the Mediterranean Sea. While they were in Malta, they had been shown an incredibly extensive network of underground tunnels, impressive feats of engineering that dated all the way back to the 16th century. A knowledgeable historian in Malta, Matthew Balzan, had pointed out to them at that time that digging tools very similar in type and appearance to the one that had just been found so deep in the Tot 1 shaft were known to have been used by the historic Knights of Malta. This renowned religious and military order was active during that 16th century period and was known for their extensive and sophisticated tunneling and construction projects. The possible connection felt incredibly strong and electrifying. A growing conviction began to solidify among the Oak Island team members. Their current primary dig site, the deep Tot 1 caisson, was indeed located in an area of original, very old, and previously unknown workings. This ancient pickaxe fragment, now dated so conclusively to such an early period, could represent a critically important and tangible link. It possibly connected the earliest, still unexplained major construction efforts on remote Oak Island directly to a group like the Knights of Malta, an order well known throughout history for their advanced engineering skills and their ability to undertake large and complex building projects. If this connection were to be further substantiated, it could also lend significant support to some of the more profound theories about what might have been brought to Oak Island for long-term safekeeping by such a capable and resourceful group. perhaps priceless religious articles of great historical importance, or even caches of vital historical documents. Rick Lagina took some time to reflect deeply on the significance of this single find. He shared with the team that his main takeaway from Carmen's detailed analysis was the sheer, almost unbelievable amount of hard work, the incredible degree of physical toll that the ancient tool had clearly endured. This, he felt, really spoke volumes about the immense labor and effort it must have taken for those unknown individuals to accomplish whatever it was they were doing on Oak Island so very long ago in the distant past. He also expressed his profound appreciation for the collaborative way in which the different expert perspectives had come together to build a more complete and nuanced understanding of this single yet profoundly telling artifact. He acknowledged the crucial contributions of Carmen's practical blacksmithing knowledge, Emma's precise scientific analysis, and insights from other dedicated team members like geoscientist Dr. Laird Niven. Rick recognized that it would undoubtedly take all of them, pooling their diverse skills and working together with unwavering persistence to eventually arrive at a fuller understanding of Oak Island's enduring and complex questions. The team collectively felt that, with this discovery, they might be getting very close to understanding a significant, previously unknown chapter in the island's long history, particularly concerning who was on Oak Island when they were there and what their ultimate purpose might have been. This one ancient tool from deep within the earth had opened a door to a much earlier chapter in Oak Island's long saga, full of hard work and unknown objectives that continued to fuel the quest. For Rick Lagina, this entire endeavor on Oak Island represents far more than just a television program or a simple search for valuables. It stands as the pursuit of a lifelong passion. His deep fascination with the island and its unsolved questions began when he was merely a young boy, just 11 years of age. This occurred after he read a compelling article in an edition of Reader's Digest magazine published in 1965. That article carefully detailed Oak Island's perplexing history and the ongoing, often frustrating search for whatever important things might lie buried beneath its soil. That story ignited a spark of curiosity and wonder in young Rick, a spark that steadily grew into a determined and unwavering flame over the many decades that followed. He carried the profound questions of Oak Island with him throughout his years of dedicated service as a postal worker in his home state of Michigan, never once letting go of the dream that one day he might personally be able to contribute to finding real answers and bringing clarity to the island's long story. His steadfast belief in the genuine importance of Oak Island's unresolved past eventually played a key role in convincing his brother, Marty Lagina, to join him in this enormous and challenging undertaking. Marty, a successful engineer and businessman, brought his own considerable skills and resources to the partnership. Together with their dedicated and diverse team, they have poured immense amounts of resources, countless hours of hard work, and a great deal of emotional energy into this ongoing search. Rick, who is often seen by viewers and team members as the more openly hopeful and historically driven of the two brothers, has consistently been the one to emphasize the vital human element of the island's past. He often speaks of the dedication, the strong belief, and the incredible, almost unimaginable efforts of those unknown individuals who came to Oak Island before them. Beyond the deeply significant and ancient pickaxe fragment recovered from the depths of the Tot 1 shaft, dating back to the 1500s, Rick has been a central figure in many other remarkable uncoverings. These finds have slowly but surely peeled back the multiple layers of Oak Island's complex and often baffling history. There was, for instance, the discovery of the lead cross, a small but potent artifact whose material composition and distinctive design pointed towards a possible connection to the legendary Knights Templar, or at the very least, a very early Christian presence on the island, dating back many, many centuries. Rick Lagina's deep dig unearthed a tool from centuries past, rewriting Oak Island's timeline. What other ancient truths lie waiting in the depths, like subscribe for more?